It's Rob!
Tony! And I'm Jeff.
We're in gaming!
And that's you!
Hello gamers and welcome back to the inn. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshack if you want to call me by my Hearthstone name. And due to the most popular video we've released recently, which is the Hearthstone, the upcoming format changes, I went into great detail about that. Then I released a video after that, basically identifying some of the major questions we had from the first video. And then this video is now answering questions that we got from the second video, answering questions about the first video. It's a long chain, but anyway, I love the feedback you guys are giving me. It's allowing me to make these videos in a timely manner and kind of making them based on what you guys want to hear. So this video is going to focus on the classic cards and the basic cards that you get in Hearthstone. Obviously, when they change the format over to standard, there's been a lot of chatter about these cards getting nerfed or changed in some fashion, and what cards do you think are going to get changed and what those changes may be. So, without further ado, we'll go into my collection. We will start with the basic, and then we'll head into the classic cards. We'll go through each class and kind of talk about what cards I think are going to be getting the not ban hammer, but the nerf hammer. And then we won't talk about too much in great detail. Wow, we won't go into great detail due to the fact that there is a lot of cards to cover. But we'll talk a little bit about the ones maybe a little bit more than others based on what I think they're going to be significant impacts, maybe to a deck or two that it'll change. And for off the bat, Druid is going to be definitely one I'm going to talk about the most likely, and that's going to be the Savage Roar Force of Nature combo. As you know, if you've played Hearthstone at all in the past month, you've seen a lot of Druid lately, and that is because it's a tier 1 deck, and that is mainly because Force of Nature Savage Roar, for 9 mana, you can deal 14 damage. That's insane. That's crazy. That's half someone's health with 2 cards. And you can run 2 of each of these cards, which means there's a pretty high likelihood by turn 9 you most likely have one or the other. And cards like Savage Roar don't even have to be comboed with Force of Nature. They can win games all on their own. So a huge topic right now is what they're going to do about Druid, especially the Savage Roar Force of Nature combo, because for a deck to be, literally, the deck's been modified just a couple cards since, vanilla Hearthstone, and it's a tier 1 deck. Nothing's really changed about the deck, the way it's run, the way it's been played, and it's insane how good this deck is. I'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about maybe Savage Combatant and the fact that Savage Combatant it's a crazy 4-drop. Like, the card is insane, and people don't even play it because Druids already have so many good cards. Like, I'm gonna go off on a tangent. I stop now. Anyway, Savage Roar Force of Nature. So the likelihood of either one of these cards getting nerfed is really high. If anything, I'm not gonna throw out my opinion on what they should do to the card because I'm not a card creator. I'm sure Blizzard has this down pat. They know what they're doing. I am just a player with insight on what I think is really broken right now. And Force of Nature Savage Roar, it's broken. You gotta admit, it's broken. And they might change, Savage Roar to 4 mana, so it takes 10 mana due to the combo. They might change it so it gives only Beasts the +2, or they could change Force of Nature. Force of Nature by itself is really not an issue. That card's, it's decent, it's not overpowered, but when you combo those two together, it's like Grim Patrons with Warsong Commander. Grim Patron wasn't broken. Grim Patron with Warsong Commander was broken. So I just hope when they nerf cards, they don't destroy the card. Like, as we know, when Blizzard nerfs a card, which means nerf, if you're not familiar with the term, make it lower the caliber of the card so it's not as powerful. They don't just do that. They fucking take a Doom Hammer and they just smash the fuck out of the card, and there's nothing left. It's just like pieces. Like Warsong Commander it will never be used again, at all. They broke it. They destroyed it. They fucking obliterated it. Destroyer of Worlds came in there and just torched the card. Anyway, so hopefully they don't do that to all the classic and basic cards when they nerf them. Please make them usable. Just don't make them broken anymore. So I believe that's going to be one of them. I think that's it for the Druid. As for the Hunter, I look at Hunter's Mark and I see a 0-drop spell. In any game, this is normally an issue. Just because 0 mana, we've seen it with Soulfire. That card was changed to 1 mana, and I really see Hunter's Mark going to 1 mana. The ability 1 mana and change minion's health to 1 really isn't that big of a difference, but it does make it a little bit better in the terms of it being not so broken, and it makes it so if lock and load decks become a thing, they can't just keep cycling out 0-drop spells and keep just going crazy. I think 1 mana cost is fair for this. Again, these aren't what's going to happen. I'm just throwing out my opinion on what I think will get nerfed. There's nothing really in here too crazy. Obviously, Starving Buzzard got fucked once upon a time. Everything seems pretty good here in the Mage for the basic cards. Paladin, there's really nothing too crazy. True Silver Champion, they'll probably keep it. I mean, it's not as good as a Death Spite, but it is getting near the Death Spite level because it is 4-drop, 4/2 weapon, and this restores over the course of its durability 4 health, as the Death Spite would deal 1 damage to everything on the field, which is much more powerful than 4 health, depending on your situation. I think that's so. Maybe True Silver, but not sure. Priests, we have really nothing too crazy in here. Priests don't have mind control. I mean, the card costs 10 mana. You can't say it's crazy because it is good. It is a good card, but it's not broken. It's not a Force of Nature Savage Roar. What do we got in the rogues? I really don't see anything too crazy in rogues. Some people say that sprint is too good, but again, it has to be comboed with prep. So they're essentially using 2 cards and 4 mana to draw 4 cards, which is essentially 2 mana, or 4 mana for 2 cards extra. So it's not too crazy. Rockbiter with Doomhammer could also be something. It's, again, 6 mana for 10 damage. I really don't know what they would do to it. Again, I'm not a developer on cards, but I can tell you it is broken, and we may see some changes there. But again, I'm not exactly sure what those changes might be. If I have an opinion, I'll let you know. Some of these cards actually do have a little bit of what I think they'll be, but some of them like that, I have no idea. And this is Soulfire, remember, 0 cost. And it would still, the effect was the same, but it cost 0, now it costs 1, and this is why I think, what is it called, Hunter's Mark will fall into the same boat as Soulfire. Just my opinion. Again, don't hold me to these. Nothing too crazy here. War Axe, I don't know. This is like by far one of the best weapons in the game. It's essential to the warrior. I don't know, maybe they'll make it a 2 for 2/2, but then that just ruins it. That turns it into a Glaive Zuka, and Glaive Zuka still has an ability after that, so that'd be kind of stupid. Turning it into a 3/1 would make it useless. And making it into a 2/3, no overload, would make it better than the Shaman's weapon. So again, you don't want to really make the same card better in one deck than the other, like exactly the same. And one's just obviously better. So I don't really know, but it's still, War Axe is a great card in my opinion. Maybe not too OP, but it's still it is a really good weapon. It's hard for anybody to warrant playing any other 2-drop weapon besides this. We saw how well King's Defender went. Yeah, not so well. Hey, Commander, as we know, they fucking ruined this card. They hit it in the face with a fucking slapstick of Nerf. Nothing really too crazy in here. And looking at the neutrals, this is where we're gonna get into some detail. We'll probably skim through a lot of these pretty quickly. Again, we might even see some buffs to some of the neutral cards. Again, I'm not sure, but we will in fact be seeing nerfs. I'm sure about seeing nerfs because they mentioned the nerfs. They just didn't mention what they're nerfing and yeah, what nerfs they're making. So, but we know they are nerfing some basic / classic cards. All right, so we'll go into the classic cards here. We'll start from the classes again. Druid's going to be the heavy talk of this one. Again, Keeper of the Grove. This card is so broken. I cannot, it's deal 2 damage and silence a minion, or silence a minion, not and silence. Oh my god, that'd be crazy. Anyway, deal 2 damage or silence a minion. It's just a rare, it's a 4-drop, and it's a 2/4. So the stats really aren't that bad, and the ability, as we know, Druid gives you the ability to sometimes, depending on the spell of the creature, give you options, such as Druid's Claw, Nourish, Starfall. This is the option thing isn't what makes it crazy. It's just the effect. Every Druid runs 2 of these. It goes in every Druid deck. No matter what kind of Druid deck you're playing, this card goes in it. And in cards like that, remind me of cards like Dr. Boom and Shredder. It doesn't matter what deck you're playing, it almost always fits in it, especially a card like Keeper. So I don't know, maybe if they'll reduce the stats on them to maybe like a 2/3 or a 3/3. I think a 3/3 would even still be too good. So I think like maybe a 2/3 would make sense. Again, I don't know. I can just tell you I expect to see something with this card being changed. Moving to, again, like I said, Force of Nature by itself, really not that crazy of a card. For 6 mana, you get to deal up to 6 damage, and you get 2/2s that die at the end of the turn. So again, the card is good, but it's just not broken. Like, for example, Keeper of the Grove, Savage Roar with the Force of Nature. And then another broken card is Ancient of Lore. The ability, not only does it have pretty good stats for 5/5, I mean, it has the same stats as Sylvanas since he costs 6. You can draw 2 cards or restore 5 health. For the most part, we always see people drawing 2 cards. This, in my opinion, is way too powerful. Like, I'll actually talk about the Savage Combatant thing in my... So, as we know, if you don't know what Savage Combatant is, not Savagery. Oh yeah, because I'm on classic cards. Unclick that. Offense. So Savage Combatant. If any other class had this card, any other class, it would be played in every single deck, 2 of them, without a doubt. In Druid, because Druid already has so many powerful cards at the 4-drop ratio and already in the deck, most of the time, most Druids don't even play this card, which would be like so fucking broken in any other deck. But in Druid deck, it really doesn't even shine because all the other cards are so good, if that tells you anything. So Druid is, in my opinion, going to be seeing some big changes. There's just so many great cards in the Druid deck. Like, Swipe, again, really good card, but not broken like some of the other ones I mentioned. Okay. All right, so again, we've mentioned Ancient of Lore, and some of you might think Ancient of War is actually really good. He is good, but again, he can be silenced. There's ways around him. You can alter what decks you're playing and cards in your deck to compensate for cards that can be silenced. As for like Ancient of Lore and Force of Nature Savage Roar, it really doesn't matter what you do. It's going to happen, and it's gonna fuck you. So, I think we've talked about Druid enough. Looking at the Hunter cards, because Mad Scientist isn't going to be in the picture anymore, secrets really aren't. They're still good, but they're not as OP as they are now because they're being cast for free. Savannah Highmane is a card. The old Doctor 6, normally when this card comes out, there's the saying that if it can attack your opponent's face 1 time, which means hit them directly 1 time, you will win that game if you're playing Hunter and you've played this and you attack their face. So I think maybe the summon 2/2 hyenas might turn into 2/1s. So it summons 2/1s, which means if you're playing any class like a Druid, a Rogue, a Mage, you're able to Fireball or attack it down. You're able to kind of clear the field after you've dealt with that Savannah Highmane. But I mean, for 6 mana cost, you get a 4/4 basically, which makes this a 9. A 10/9. So for a 6-drop, you get a 10/9, and it's like split into pieces with Death Rattle. So. It's an insane card, and the fact that it's a rare, maybe if it was a legendary, you can only run 1 of them, that would also make sense, but then if it was a legendary, it adds the whole factor of being able to craft it for the players who aren't spending money on this game. It makes it really difficult. So, just making cards legendary where you can only play 1 of them isn't always an option, because for some of the players that can't afford to get all these legendaries, it really hurts them and impacts them in ways that they can't play some really good cards like Savannah Highmane, which was, it's only a rare, so it's really easy to craft, but it's broken at that. Fucking crazy broken, my opinion. Again, all my opinion for those of you who are like, oh, it's not, I've seen this and that. Yeah, I'm sure you have, and I'm sure you have your own opinions, but these are just mine. I don't want anybody, getting their panties in a bunch. Again, just my opinion. All right, I really don't see anything on this Mage page. Nothing too crazy here. The fact that Mage Secrets cost 3, that's a lot of mana, and there's a lot of ways around it, whether it be Kez and Mystic, which is getting removed, so I don't know why I mentioned Kez and Mystic, but Mage. I see this guy actually coming back in a big way because of the fact that he makes your secret cost 0. So he's essentially a Mad Scientist from your hand. Don't get the Death Rattles, but if there's a secret in your hand, huge tempo plays. For 3 mana, he's a 4/3. So the stats are there, and his ability allows you to pretty much get 6 mana from a 3-drop card, and he's got decent stats. So I see the Mage coming in play here. Again, Archmage. Really, 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 really good Mage card. I don't know what they're going to change about him. Maybe they'll only make it so you can use his ability twice, where you get only 2 fireballs, or it can only be used, if the spell that you cast has to be 3 or more mana, so the max you could combo with him is like a coin and then cast a spell, so it's only 2 fireballs in your hand, or if you play him when you don't have coin, then the max, if you have 10 mana, you can only get 1 fireball that turn, which allows you to then deal with him the following turn. But to be able to cast any spell and get as many fireballs as you want, so that just seems broken in my opinion. Again, I really don't know what they're going to do about these cards because I'm not a developer. I don't, I've been playing card games a long time, but it's hard for me to give any impact, what I think on every single card. Some cards I have a decent idea, but some of them I just have no idea. It's not my job. For Paladin, I really don't see anything too crazy here besides Tyrion. And again, Tyrion's really, he's good. He's almost to the point of being crazy, but he's just not as good as some other. If you silence Tyrion, he's only a 6/6, and it costs them 8 mana. For cards like Archmage, they can get, where'd Archmage go? they can get the ability off the same turn. Like they're immediately able to reap benefits from his ability. As for Tyrion, you have to kill Tyrion in order to reap his benefits, or be able to attack the following turn to knock off the Divine Shield. But you can silence him, which makes it so you can play around him. As for Archmage, you just can't. Force Nature Savage Roar, I mean, you put up taunts and then they just kill your taunts, and then, again, they fuck you. Nothing really too crazy here. Shadow Priest is good, but again, she's not insanely broken like some of these other cards. For Rogue, they're gonna need to help out Rogue a lot. They took away Oil, and Oil was like the only thing in this, like, if you saw Rogue, like I mentioned before in my new format video, if you watch that, I talked about cards that they took away and added, or could add, but for most part, Rogue, it's gonna need a lot of help if they take away the Oil. As for Shaman, I do not see particularly anything that stands out, besides maybe, again, Doomhammer and the Rockbiter that would need to be dealt with. I'm sorry if I got off track there a little bit. Matt had walked in, he started messing with some shit on the wall, and it took me out of my groove. Oh, man. Okay, Windlord, really not that great of a card, sadly. It's like, why do they have to make, like, iconic characters like Illidan? Like, everybody knows Illidan. The card fucking blows. And then they make Dr. Boom. It's just like, who the fuck is a Dr. Boom? And he's like the best card in the game, and he's played everywhere. It's just like, make cards that actually are cool, like Windlord and, you know, Illidan, and cards that people we actually know good. So when we play them, we're like, we know that guy. He's there. We saw him. He's, wow. And then you play Dr. Boom, you're just like, who the fuck is this guy? He's just good, and I don't know why I'm playing him, but he's good. For demons, nothing really stands out here. I'm gonna miss getting not Lord Draxus, but Mal'Ganis out of my Bane of Doom. It's gonna be a sad, sad day. We still have Lord Draxus though, which is cool. Lord Draxus, again, if he was an 8-drop, he'd be broken because you'd be allowed to use your passive the certain turn he comes out. But the fact that he's 9 mana means you have to Emperor him in order for you to use your passive the same turn. So I was gonna say, if you could use your passive, it would probably be the Nerf mode, but the fact that it costs him 9 mana, which is a hefty price to pay, and he puts you at 15, which makes you, you know, combo down from a lot of different decks, whether you're running Mage or whatnot, you can definitely deal. It's not too crazy. It's good, but it's not too crazy. Warrior, don't really particularly see anything too crazy here. Hellscream is, again, he's a good card. You want Hellscream, but he's not fucking insanely broken, so. So the neutrals. Now we're actually going to get into a lot of cards to talk about. Here's one of them. I'm sure if you watch Raynad or Crip or any of the top streamers, they've mentioned this many times before, Knife Juggler. This card is, in my opinion, along with theirs, he's insane. There's a lot of ways that they could have written this card to make it so he was capped in his, you know, amount of potential he could bring out, whether it have been a battle cry, deal X damage depending on how many creatures you have on your side of the field to the number of creatures you have on your opponent's side of the field or them directly. So let's say if you have like 4 mana, or you have 3 creatures on the field, you play Knife Juggler, he pings 3 times as a battle cry, and that's it. That seems pretty good. But the fact that you can ping every creature you bring out, he's a 2-drop and he's a 3/2. That's way too much. So he's either gonna, you know, be a 2 for 2/2, a 2 for 1/2, or it's gonna turn into like a battle cry and deal damage based on that. But there's no fucking way they're gonna keep Knife Juggler the way he is. There's just, if they do, I'll be very surprised. But I expect this card out of any to get, you know, the Nerf hammer. A lot of people don't like Ironbeak, but I think this is going to be a card that needs to stay because of the fact that Silence, I think, is going to be a big thing in this upcoming new meta. Like, there's going to be a lot of changes, and with those changes, cards that require you to kind of build against certain decks, like Silences and things like that, are going to be really useful. So I think Owl's going to be, I don't know if they'll nerf it or not, but I think this is going to be a card that's going to see a lot more play. Maybe 2 a deck, I don't know. Millhouse, one of the best cards. I'm just kidding. I couldn't even keep a straight face when I was talking about that. All right, Big Game Hunter. This basically means if you play a big card, it's going to die. And some say, oh, well, I'm actually, I play big, like, it's a good card to deal with other players playing big cards. So let's say they play Rag or Boom, you big game hunter. It's like, oh, I've countered the card. No, you've just simply played a different version of a Dr. Boom. You played the 3 drops of Dr. Boom. And for 3 mana to kill something with 7 or more attack, and it has a 4/2 stats, in my opinion, it's just really, it's broken. It makes it so pretty much no matter, like right now, let's say a mid-range hunter, or a mid-range deck, not hunter, but any mid-range deck, they play Dr. Boom, which is, one of their bigger creatures, and they maybe play 1 or 2 creatures besides that, maybe. Unless you're playing a Control Warrior, which the whole deck is mainly big minions. But let's just say you're playing a normal mid-range deck, you have a Dr. Boom, maybe a Rag, and that's about it. Maybe another big card. Big Game Hunter takes care of one of those, and then most of the time, whether you're playing a Priest who can play Shadow Ward Death, or a Paladin who can Equality, or a Mage who can Polymorph, most of the time, the big cards don't live a turn. If not, they just die instantly. And this is because there's cards like Big Game Hunter around. And I think this card, not that cards like Big Game Hunter are bad, but just being able to instantly deal with a 7-drop minion or more for 3 mana is insane. Like, it should either cost more mana, the stats be even worse, or instead of just destroying the minion, maybe it should say, deal 5 damage to a minion with 7 more attack, which means for 3 mana, you can deal 5 damage, which is pretty good, and then you're also going to have to at least have another minion on the board to, kamikaze into it, or maybe have to cast another spell to deal with a big creature. Because when you play a big creature, you're investing a lot of your mana, and just it being instantly torn away with a Big Game Hunter for only 3 mana is a huge tempo loss, and it's silly to me that this card exists. I don't know. It's just one of those cards that, it's personal opinion, some people love Big Game. In my opinion, I mean, obviously I play him because he's good, but I would rather not have him in the game, or at least change his ability some, or change his mana cost, something like that. All right, nothing really seems to be too crazy here. Leroy Jenkins, I think they nerfed this guy, and he's still somewhat playable. Good job. Really don't see anything here. Sylvanas, I think she's fair. You silence her, she becomes useless. 6 mana is not a hefty price to pay for an ability like this, and the stats aren't terrible, but again, they're not great, so that's fine. Baron, again, it does damage to everybody. 5 health is not a lot, so whether you're fireballing it, frostbolting it, it's almost dead when you cast any form of CC on this. Even the lightning bolt for 1 mana almost, more than halfway kills this guy. Okay. Gruul, Northdomer, all those cards are terrible. Rag is fair, randomly targets creature. 8 damage is a lot, but again, if you've got, you're playing Paladin, or an aggro deck, or against an aggro deck, and you play Rag, it's more than likely you're just going to kill a 1/1 or a 1/2 or whatever, they filled the board with. Onyxia, not so much. Ysera is a good card, but I wouldn't consider her stupid broken OP, but they might, I don't know, maybe 10 health? I don't know. It's hard. Alexstrasza, though, this is a card that I believe, because Freeze Mage, it's looking like Freeze Mage is going to be moving up in the tiers of how good it is, because it's been a deck that's been around for a while. We know it works. It's consistent. We don't know what other decks are going to come out with the new cards, but we do know what we already have, and that's most of the cards in Freeze Mage are still there, besides maybe like the Mad Scientists, which you can kind of go without because they weren't there in vanilla, and Freeze Mage was still around then. So Alexstrasza may see a change. I think I saw a post where it said Battle Cry, give a character 15 health. Since antique heal bots are going away, there's no really huge heal or self-heal. So I think it's adding 15 health to either character seems like a pretty decent card. I mean, you're paying 9 mana for an 8/8 that essentially heals for 2 heal bots. So if you take the price of 2 heal bots, you get 10 mana, which would be a 6/6 if you played 2 of them on the board. And then for 1 less mana, you get 1 less health and an 8/8. Seems like a pretty fair trade if you say increase a hero's health by 15. But then that would totally destroy Freeze Mage. So I don't know what they'll do with that. But I see like this card is maybe going to see a change. Malygos, this is a very situational card. Your pretty much deck has to be built around it. So I really don't see it changing that much. Maybe the Molten Giants and Mountain Giants. I heard Raynad one stream talking about the Molten Giants and that he believes they are really good. I think it's fair. But I wouldn't mind seeing maybe a little tweak to it. Maybe it costs 22. Or maybe it's like a 7/7 or a 6/6. I don't know. but I'm potentially maybe changes happening to that. I think we pretty much covered all of the cards, though. I believe we'll be seeing changes. Again, this is just what I think. This is when I go through the cards, and what really stands out to me are those cards that we just talked about in particular. But besides that, I think we covered just about everything we needed. If I left anything out, please let me know in the comment section below, or maybe some of your suggestions at which you think those cards should be that I couldn't potentially answer, like Archmage. I had no idea what to do with that card, but I mean, he's so good. So they're going to probably have to do something. But anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Again, always love to hear your feedback. Most of these recent videos have been from your feedback, so always looking forward to reading them. Whether or not I get back to you immediately is under my time constraints. I try to respond to everybody. So with that said, I'm Warshack, and happy whatever the hell day it is.